Oscar Ogwuomo, who's the NAS Capoon National Association of Sea Dogs, and he's going to deliver a message from Professor Wole Soyinka.
Thank you. This is not Oscar, unfortunately. He couldn't make it today because of unexpected activities which he had to attend to. My name is Biola Owoaje, and I'm here to represent him and read the message from Professor Wole Soyinka to this particular event today. And it goes as so. The timing and venue for the theme of this 2012 lecture could not be more appropriate. Corruption scandals have erupted in the United Kingdom in supposedly reputable bastions of British banking, as well as the sporting arena. They coincide with the commencement of the Olympic Games, where all nations gather in a competitive spirit, contending for sporting laurels and aspiring to fly the flag of sportsmanship. That is the banner of fairness, openness, and integrity. All too easy to take consultation in these recent exposures, which tell the world that we are not alone in dismal tendency towards unfair and dishonest competition. Alas, you and I know that were corruption to be the yardstick by which Olympic laurels are awarded, our nation Nigeria will sweep all medals with little effort. Need one say more? Let us hope that this lecture series will lead to some earnest soul searching, and that the true Olympic spirit will ultimately prevail, not only on the soil of the British, but on ours in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. With the formalities already over, can I now call upon Dr. Grimot Nane to give the first lecture, please? Dr. Grimot Nane. Thank you very much.
Hello everybody, thanks for coming. I'm not used to speaking into a microphone, so I'll do my best. Something happened yesterday. Just in front of the university, a research student was asking me for some directions and information. And even though he was very white and blonde, he didn't sound like an Englishman. So we got chatting and he said, "Did you study here?" I said, "Yes." He said, "What did you do?" I told him. So he asked me, "What exactly did you study?" When I said development economics, what exactly? I said corruption, and he said, "Oh, so you're in computer science?" And I looked at him and he said, "You deal with corruption of files?" So I asked him, "Are you from Scandinavia?" He said, "Yes." And he said, "Why did I ask him?" I said, "Corruption is so low in your country that when corruption is being mentioned, you don't even think about corrupt politicians, you think about corrupt computer files." So I guess there is hope for countries that are willing to change, but change is not easy. There are many things to talk about corruption. I've spent about half a decade studying it thoroughly. I don't know whether I understand it very well, but in all that time I learned a few things. And there are theories, there are definitions, there are mechanisms, models, incentives, all sorts of things related to corruption, but that is not what we're going to deal with today. What we're going to deal with is directions in fighting corruption, what people have done before, and see if there are new directions which people can take on and try and change the terrain of corruption in Nigeria. Now, from a theoretical point of view, there are two giants in the field of corruption. The first is Mansell Olson. And Mansell Olson says why countries are corrupt is that there are special interest groups in the country that hijack government, hijack the political, social, and economic process. In fact, they become leaders of change. So you found out how after the Civil War, when the board members who got free access to indigenized corporations taken from the Westerners started spraying money, everyone else started spraying money at parties. And today, if you hold a party and money is not being sprayed, it's like you didn't hold a party. So these groups are called distributive coalitions, and all they're looking for is looking for ways to keep the public silent towards their corruption, and they're looking for ways to use the public apparatus, government apparatus, to enrich themselves. So they tamper with legislation, they tamper with public officials, they capture government officials and institutions. Now, you also have encompassing interests, which are groups or governments which think about everybody. So a country that has a good welfare system, it doesn't matter whether you're sick, or you're too old, or you're disabled, or you're poor, you're taken care of. Housing, a bit of money to spend, free access to medical care, that is encompassing interest. So the two always clash. And when the encompassing interest is dominant, there's very little corruption. Hopefully everybody is happy. But when there's distributive interests, nobody is happy because only a few are milking the country for what it's worth. So Mansour Olson says, we're talking solutions here. Mansour Olson says the only way to dislodge such a group from power, to make the government uncaptured and to administer the country unobstructed with good encompassing interests, you need a cataclysmic bloody revolution. That is one. Secondly, but most popularly, the one he advocates for, which he could prove empirically, was an outside force would invade the corrupt country, get rid of the interest groups, because the interest groups are the only people that can oppose the invading force, and then the country will now be free of these distributive activities that kill the economy of the country. And he uses two good examples in the 20th century, which are Germany and Japan, the Axis forces. When they were defeated by the Allies, they became the best examples of economic efficiency and economic development, because the government was able to operate without any interference from interest groups. So they could have an encompassing interest that everybody should be taken care of. But there's a warning that goes with that approach. After 50 years or so, when a country has gotten rid of distributive, greedy coalitions, under stable democracy, they start to grow again. And you can see, like in the economic crisis, and now it's scandal after scandal after scandal, not just in government in the Western world, but in companies, for their malpractices, they're reverting back to a corrupt system again. So for those who are interested in the work of Trotsky, maybe that's why I talked about permanent revolution, but I'm not a Marxist, so I was just mentioning in passing. So again, now we talk of revolution. Is Nigeria ready for revolution? Because it does work sometimes. My conclusion is no. The reason why is we don't have the socialization. Revolutions work when the population is fed up of what the ruling elite is doing, and they want to get rid of that way of life or everyday modus operandi. But most Nigerians actually admire, I can assume that without getting into too much trouble, that most Nigerians actually admire those in power having a good time. And they only hate corruption until a friend or a relative or a colleague gets a political office and then they start doing the things corrupt people do. They want contracts, they want all that. So I don't think they're ready for it yet. Another thing is there's Boko Haram, causing a lot of trouble, terrorizing Nigerians, killing so many innocents. It's terrible. But the issue is, that is a taste of what revolution is really like. In fact, if there was a cataclysmic revolution in Nigeria, it will be hundreds of times worse. I don't think Nigerians are ready for that kind of experience because they still want a good life. So as far as I'm concerned, Nigeria is not ready for revolution. So I think we can bypass revolution as a solution to our problem. However, when the time is ripe, if it does become ripe, and a revolution takes place and it cleans up Nigeria, so be it. But I doubt it's an option for the near or even distant future. But again, I'm not God, I don't know these things. Now there's a second option put by Robert Neild. Robert Neild also talks about military might, and what he says is that Northwestern Europe is unique for being a clean region in the world. No other region has been as clean as Northwestern Europe, and there are reasons for this. It was his central argument is there was so much war in Northwestern Europe amongst nation states that they didn't want to be invaded and conquered. If you know the history, you know the Normans came from France, conquered Britain, the Vikings came, conquered them, the Romans came. So countries were fed up of being conquered, and the only way they could become efficient militarily was to become efficient economically. So what they did was their tax systems became very efficient to collect money for military capacity, military might. They had to take care of their citizens, so their citizens would be ready to fight to the death for them. They introduced a nepotism-free civil service in which you only entered by an examination, and hopefully was relatively clean in the past. So this was what was done, and through reform, Northwestern Europe became a largely uncorrupted society. Robert Neild says it's not like that anymore, but it was then, because right now there's no threat of war anywhere. Nobody's expecting Italy to invade Spain or Germany to invade Austria. So what his example shows is that society can be reformed. But he says it's actually not about political will at all. It's about necessity and incentives. Now, when you have neighbors that are ready to attack you all the time, you have to strengthen yourself. Your political and social systems have to be strengthened. Patriotism has to be strengthened. But Nigeria, unfortunately, doesn't have that geography and history. Someone even said that in Abacha's time, even though he was a terrible dictator, some of the most efficient policies Nigeria had were effected in his time. And he loosely links it to the threat of France and Cameroon trying to take Bakassi away from Nigeria, which was easily taken away in Obasanjo's time. So maybe one thing we should pray for is to get hostile enemies, and we'll have to protect our oil wealth and our mineral wealth, and probably will become so efficient corruption will go away. But again, that is not going to happen. Where's that incentive going to come from? You can't just manufacture it. So there are reforms. We have neoliberal reform recently, the Washington Consensus that started in the 80s, and it was about privatization, monetization, transaction cost economics, and so on. But it failed woefully. And from my personal research, my contribution to the literature of corruption is that in Nigeria we have contrary institutions. A contrary institution is an institution that, due to improper development, delivers the opposite of what it's supposed to do. So if you put in an institution to stop drunkenness, it actually makes people drink more. If you put in place an institution that is supposed to, for instance, reduce immigration, you find more immigration happening. And in Nigeria, most of our institutions, I examined them thoroughly, well, in the electric power sector, and they're very contrary. I'll give you an example how a contrary institution works. Someone from DFID comes with £150 million to change some agency in government. And what happens? You find that this DFID agent saw the meetings take place, saw the budget schedules, they were beautiful, saw the expenditure schedules, the quality assurance, excellent, the accountability packages, the due process is so good, he's going away saying, these Nigerians are so intelligent, they're so wonderful. What he doesn't see is the internal component of institutions where these people have already, some people in that agency have already decided how they're going to spend the money, how they're going to share it, thank you. And they don't see that side. How they're going to put this money in a bank account, which they will withdraw money without checks, but through phone calls, and it's in a patronage, a political patronage bank. So you find out all of a sudden money becomes untraceable, it just disappears away. So that 150 million was supposed to strengthen institutions that prevent corruption. It actually just made it so easy. As they say, bring the money, just continue bringing the money. So that is why a lot of the neoliberal policy have failed, and they still do not accept the social influences of institutions. They just think of the external component, which is about procedures, methods, techniques, but it creates a lot of mirages and makes it difficult. Another issue that comes from my research is how to study it. Is I look at institutions, not from one point, but from 6 levels. Structures at the top, like say the energy sector, institutions which involve regulations, and then there's the rules. That's the point at which people interact with these institutions. There are conventions which are unwritten, they just happen. I'll give you an example in the UK. If you're going for a driving test to get your license, and you want to cede way to somebody, say, okay, you go, I'm standing still, and you flash your lights double, you failed your driving test. But the moment you pass your driving test, that's exactly what you do. So you see, that is the difference between convention and formal institutions and like conventions that develop without spontaneously. Then you have organizations. That is where all the corruption takes place. That's where all the activity takes place. Then you have habits. You see a Nigerian who was gone down a one-way in the United Kingdom. Pure Nigerian man, he's been here maybe only 3 years. An English policeman, regardless of his color, whether it's Asian, whether it's black or white, stops him. He's given a penalty charge, but there's no attempt to offer a bribe. On the other hand, if he's in Nigeria, the first thing he does is try to offer a bribe. So you have habits too. Now, what this analysis, called circle analysis, this shows that there's tension between informal and formal institutions. And the informal institutions win. A formal institution is, let us say to get a contract, you go from step A to K. You have to go through all the stages. But with informal institutions, you just go straight from A to K. So that's why it's a more efficient less cumbersome process, and those are the things killing our country. Now, when it comes to solutions, because my time is up, what are the directions? What direction should we use? In case of Robert Neild, it's closing the door. Murtala Mohammed got rid of the Ogboni and corrupt groups, but not the institutions. If you look at any corruption scandal in 2010, it is no different from the institutional processes by which corruption happened, even sometimes before independence. Nobody is closing the door on the institutions. Nobody is closing the door on the informal institutions. Now, in Nigeria, like I think in Roboland, there was a king who was removed from office for corruption, and they will say, which means they slammed the door on him. The doors to those practices were closed, and in that time they really believed in juju. The next person becoming king will swear he will not do the things that his predecessor did. That kept people in check. I would say, please, I ask for 5 more minutes, please. I would say that the Paris Confraternity is a good example of a modern organization that was able to close the door on people. It was the first anti-corruption agency. Historians can go and find out about that. It is true. And what they did was close the door on the kind of corruption they were against. In fact, the organization was formed because of this plutocratic tendency of pre-independence elite at the University of Ibadan. So, how did they close the door? They didn't waste their time looking at the formal institutions. If you were doing something in an informal matter, they met you at an informal stage. And you know how easy it was? They would simply, as a group of organized men, go to visit somebody they thought was corrupt and confronted him. It wasn't intimidation, it wasn't a warning, but I'll tell you, in 1955, in 1965, in 1975, even in 1985, it was very intimidating for a group of young, educated men to walk into a permanent secretary's office and say, you are corrupt, this thing could be exposed and so on. He put a lot of fear in them. But with the Babangida's era of sharing money, before, the closing of the door was easy when people were stealing or committing corruption alone. But when they started spreading it, I think the Paris Confraternity lost their capacity to deal with corruption at that level. What they're doing about it to deal with more complex forms of corruption, I don't know. But it stands as a case study of how important it is for people to organize and speak out. It has power. Even in the smallest, most insignificant manners, it is important. Now, I would say, in terms of closing the door, I have my recommendations that I'm publishing. One is low tolerance for informal institutions, because it is through informality most corruption happens. Like I said, instead of going from A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I to K, you just go from A to K, get the contract. There should be low tolerance for that. Secondly, there should be elite socialization. In this country, civil servants and the good governance or institutional leaders socialize people into patriotism, working hard for the country, doing better for the country. The socialization in Nigeria is how to chop money, how to buy houses overseas, how to have 16 cars. That kind of socialization should be discouraged, totally. Then there's another issue. There should be irreversible moral concentration. In Nigeria, if they're looking for a loan or they're looking for credit, they bring in Okonjo Iweala or Ezekwesili to concentrate the morality of the government or the organization. They get the loans, which they will still squander anyway. However, if there's an honest man who is heading an organization and prevents corruption, and they need to get money there, they transfer him out of there. If he's unlucky, he gets assassinated to dilute the morality there. Because if the morality there is strong, they won't get access to the money. So it should be, morality should be a positive concentration, no reversals to have dilution. And then, second, the last thing is, we have institutions that say, we're going to reduce corruption, we're going to put in good governance, accountability, free, fair media. To me, that is a lot of empty talk. What we should have is outcome-specific institutions. Institutions that will guarantee a road is to be tarred and is tarred. We shouldn't be focusing on corruption. We should be focusing on markets. We should be focusing on innovation. We should be focusing on service delivery and delivery of objectives we need. If those are in place, I do honestly believe from my research and discussing with many top experts in the world, we may be able to stem the problem of corruption. But we must remember the leadership of the top, at the top must be ready to put these measures in place, and there must be an incentive. Where that incentive is going to come from, we don't know. But those of us who are concerned enough to give our lives to the concerns of corruption may one day come up with the answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nane. There's lots of things there within that lecture that we can debate during the questions and answer session. So without any further ado, I'm going to move